This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 171 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. So, have you ever thought about moving to another country, or have you already immigrated somewhere? It's a really big move. I mean, especially if you're someone here in Australia where other countries are really far away, or if you migrate to somewhere far from your home country, then it's a really massive decision to make and quite a challenge in many ways. So today, in episode 171, I have got 3 guests who have permanently moved to another country, to quite a varying array of countries. I've got people who've moved to Australia, to Japan, and to Mexico. So 3 very different countries, and yet the stories that they tell are really all the same. It's all, it's all a challenge when you leave your home country and decide to make a permanent home somewhere quite new and quite different. Now, as for me, I have, of course, moved back to Australia, my home country, moved back to my home city, in fact, my hometown of Perth, once I'd spent about 6 years living abroad. But when I was overseas, I left with the intention of coming back, always. I left lots of stuff here in boxes. I was going abroad to teach English. I didn't plan to spend, the rest of my life abroad. But I have to say that when I was in Germany, I did consider staying there, and I could have imagined it. And of course, at the time I met my then German husband, and he really wanted to move back to Australia, or for him to move, for me to move back. And so I did. But looking back, I'm sure I could have agreed to stay in Germany, or, with someone else or whatever. I really did. There's lots of things about life in Germany that I did like, and the weather was quite a challenge, especially towards the end of winter. But I guess you get used to that kind of stuff. So I can kind of relate to how it must feel, but harder to make that big decision to go somewhere, I think. I was already there, and it seemed like something I could do to stay. Now, as for the future, I kind of usually assume that even when my son's grown up and left home, that Australia will always be my base for, longer travels. But honestly, lately I feel more open to perhaps creating a new home base somewhere in the world in, 20 years or 30 years' time. It kind of depends on how the world changes and how Australia changes. Right now, I don't love lots of parts of Australia, especially, our attitude towards climate change in the future and some of the politics and things like that. And that has made me feel, maybe this is not my, maybe I don't necessarily have to stay here forever. But who knows? The big change for me is that I feel open to the idea. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see. But for the right now, I have these 3 awesome guests who have moved to another country, and let's hear their stories. So my first guest is Queen D Michele, who moved from the US to Mexico, and she told me this story early last year, I think it must have been, but I have been waiting for the right episode to put it in, because I just love, there's a middle part of this story, I know you'll know what it is once you hear it, that I just think is one of the most fabulous things I've heard in ages. So here is Queen describing how she feels now that she's moved to Mexico.
Amanda, I wake up every morning with a smile on my face and joy in my heart.
Oh, that is wonderful. You did the right thing.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did the right thing. And it was, people say, how could you, weren't you afraid? Weren't you, to just leave and go to another country? And if I wasn't or didn't have some fear, in the beginning, I think that would have been a little off.
Yeah, exactly. It's normal to be about such a big move.
And fear is good to a certain extent, because it did help me make sure that I had, all my things in order so that it ran as smoothly as it could, but not to let fear cripple you.
Exactly.
that's the key. There has to be a balance there, so that it doesn't cripple you. Because I tell you, and especially for someone like me that's middle age, that's mid age, just in a female. I hear a lot from females that saying, you've inspired me to think about. You've inspired me to, because I've been considering it, but you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a good role model in that way. That's what makes me think, when you decided to leave, what did your family and friends back in the States, do they support you? Did some think you were crazy, or how did that all go?
Well, my kids were very supportive of me because they are grown. They're in their 20s, early 20s, and they're adulting themselves now. So they were proud that I was doing this. But I will tell you this about my family, my immediate family, my mom, Amanda, didn't even know I moved to Mexico for close to a year.
How? What? What?
She did not know. At the time, she was 81. She was 81. No, 82. And she had some health problems. She had some health issues. And because I was kind of scared to tell her, I kind of used that as a cover, and I told family members, I said, look, if you tell her, you'll kill her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that, of course, no one wanted that on their conscience. So we kept the charade up, because with cell phones, how does she not know that I'm not in Atlanta?
You could be anywhere. Exactly. Oh my gosh. She knows now?
She does know now. Well, she did heal from the surgery, but here's the deal. She healed from surgery and got her health back and everything. And she got a Facebook account.
Oh no.
I didn't see that coming. I did not. She was 82. I did not see my 82-year-old mother getting a Facebook account.
That's a bit tricky.
Yeah. So I was visiting in the States, actually. When she did get I was visiting my daughter who lives in Salem, Oregon. And she's like, Mom, Grandma just friend requested me. I was like, what? And sure enough, my mother was friend requested. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I knew then that
it was time to tell her
that before I headed back to Mexico, I was going to have to tell her, because of course I'm going to put on,
Yes, you can't keep it once. Yeah, if she's on Facebook, then it's much too hard to keep up that charade. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I had to tell her, and I told the reason why. She was quite salty with me for some time. Behind that, she was quite salty. And get this, during that first year, that's when I wrote the book, Considerations. And she received I sent it to her, and she received the book on yesterday, on Wednesday. Yeah. She got the book, and now she's reading. And I'm hoping that this will help her to understand her a lot better, because she thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's brilliant.
Understand her only daughter a little better. I'm the only girl and the youngest, and
right, yeah. So it's a big change for her to discover that you've actually been living in a foreign country for a year.
Yes.
But isn't that amazing? Thanks to technology, that it's still possible to be in close contact, and her not to realize this. Yeah.
Yeah, you really don't know, where the person is that you told. They can say they're a certain place,
Now I'm starting to think maybe some of the people I know, maybe they're not where I think they are.
They'll be like, well, let's video chat.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Hang on. What's in the background?
Yeah, right, exactly. I tell you, technology can really, because with an ex-boyfriend, with that story, I'm at the hospital with really? Yeah, show me.
Yeah, that's so true. Exactly.
Are you really? Yeah, I like to see that.
Yeah. You can't get away with so much these days. That's so true. Oh, that's fabulous. Oh, well, anyway, despite your mum thinking you're crazy, it sounds to me like you made exactly the right decision, and that it's going splendidly.
Well, you know what? My friends now, and there were many who thought, yeah, right, that's crazy. Why would you? But now they're seeing, because I've been here a year now. They're like, oh, Okay, it is possible for one to travel, to move abroad, to reinvent themselves, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even if you do it on your own, even if you're a woman, there's so many.
Yes,
Yeah, I
even if
think. Yeah.
even if you're Black, even if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's
So
such
I'm
an
glad I'm
inspiring
able
message to get
to.
out there.
Yes, and I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to put that word out, and to say that you can do it,
Yeah.
and if you're afraid, do it afraid.
Yes.
Just do
Just do it. And yes, feel the fear and do it anyway, that old saying.
it anyway. Absolutely.
So my favourite bit there, you've probably guessed, is the wonder of the internet in the fact that Queen was able to get away with not telling her mother for a whole year that she had moved to another country, and she was still in contact with her and her mother didn't realise. Isn't life amazing? I'm glad she has told her now, I must say. But you just never know what's possible. Now, my next guest is Suzanne Kamata, who moved from the US to Japan some decades back now when she married a Japanese man. And we chatted just briefly about how she feels living in Japan these days.
I guess I feel comfortable here, but I know that I don't really fit in.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of a cushy place. I mean, you lived here, so you probably know, like, people don't really, like, express their irritation and anger the way Americans do.
Yeah, it's a very polite place, and I loved it. But I always felt that I was glad to be a foreigner there. Like I thought it was easier as a foreigner, perhaps.
Exactly. So there are like I've said before, there are so many rules. So it's sometimes better just to be oblivious and not know the rules.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, people forgive me when I, mess up and blend. I wear I teach at the university, and I think my students probably think I dress like, ostentatiously and like an adult.
But they forgive you because you're not Japanese.
Black all the time, black suit.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's such a funny place.
And I don't know any better.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I often wonder if I don't know. I'd love to spend an extended time there again. I mean, even just to eat the food all the time. Like, I love all the Japanese food. And it's just not the same elsewhere in the world, and there's so much variety there, and it just suits me. So even that.
I feel comfortable here, like I said. So
it's an interesting part of this whole moving countries thing to ponder, is how foreign you will always be in some places. So, for example, for Suzanne in Japan, she will always look like a foreigner. Japan is a really homogenous society, and you stand out a lot, and especially she lives in a more remote part, not in Tokyo or Osaka. So she will always look like a foreigner. And certainly I agree with her experiences. They match with mine when I lived in Japan, that when you look like a foreigner and are a foreigner, then you're given a lot of leeway in not having to necessarily follow all the cultural conventions and stuff, which is kind of good and bad, I think. I mean, it's nice that you're not going to get in trouble for not doing exactly the right thing just because you don't know, but you also probably always feel a bit of an outsider. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know which of those is better, but like she said, she feels comfortable, and I agree that Japan is in many ways a comfortable place to live, and somewhere I really do want to spend some more time again in the future. Now, my final guest today is Luana Marchi, and she moved from Brazil to Australia. Must be getting on for 8 years ago now. I think it was a year ago that we recorded this conversation. And we talked about, some of the difficulties of that move.
7 years ago, me and Lucas, we were engaged at the time. Mm-hmm. And we decided, I always had the dream to live overseas or to travel overseas for a while. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a time in Brazil that for us, a lot of things has happened, and one of them is that the place where my mom works, her office, was robbed, and then Lucas got shot in his leg, and
wow,
he stayed in bed because he broke his femur for like in a face, and he had to stay in bed for 3 months.
Wow,
almost.
gosh,
Yeah, and after that, like we after 3 months when he like was recovered and everything, he got back to work and everything was like he was doing well at work. I was doing well too. I was just about to finish my uni by the time I was doing law in Brazil. But we both had the sensation that like we weren't completing that. Like we should open our mind and explore new opportunities. Like Lucas was a little bit scared with everything that has happened, and he would love to challenge himself too.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started to search about few places that we could go and live for a while, but also work at the same time. We both had no English at all by the time, and we would love to learn English because we knew even if we decide to go back to Brazil, it was going to be really important for our careers.
Right.
But as we didn't have enough money to like just study, we started to search places that we could study and work at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up deciding to come to Australia. And by the beginning, our plans was just come and stay for 6 months and then decide what to do. Now it's been about 7 years, and like for us, Australia is home. We love living here. Was really challenging in the beginning because we both had no English at all. We came through winter, and when we were negotiating our trip, people from the agency, they told us that winter in Australia is almost same as winter in Brazil, which is not true at all.
Not true, no.
No. And for us, it was really struggling because like when we first arrived, we have not enough winter clothes, and like was raining. It was one of I think one of the worst winters that we spent here in Australia. Like was miserable, and
that's bad timing.
A few things that we always hear from agencies when they want to sell you like a student package. For example, it's easier to find jobs and it's not cold, or house for living is cheaper. We got through all the challenges, and I think as a foreign person, everyone does.
Yeah, I bet. And especially, did you initially move to Sydney? Because that's a pretty expensive place to live, right?
Yes. We initially came to Sydney and we were staying in the city, which is like really crazy because we both came from a countryside cities in Brazil, and like Sydney is really big, and especially the city is really busy and a lot of different people, and even like we struggled a lot to find jobs because we couldn't communicate at all. Like I did have experience overseas. Before I came to Australia, I went to Canada for a month. But like you have the expectation that you're gonna understand people, and when you come to Australia, the accent is totally different because in Brazil we use it to American accent when we like go to the movies or listen to music, even that we are not able to understand everything. Like it's an easier accent for us to recognize, and when you arrive in Australia, the accent is totally different. Like was really scary for us, and we got a little bit desperate for the first 3 months.
Wow, I bet.
Yeah.
But you managed to get through that, obviously.
Yes. I think when you live overseas, you're always facing challenge, and it's always gonna happen something different, especially because like it's a big change, not just for continents, because like we are almost on the opposite than in Brazil. We're so far away from our family. But the big change of cultures, language, even food, because I think in the beginning, of course, we struggle about food. There's just little things that you don't expect it to be so hard, but it gets hard when, I think when you're sensitive, when you're vulnerable, I would say.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then little things like not being able to have familiar foods and stuff can feel much worse. It's interesting to hear about how Luana and husband Lucas made the decision to leave Brazil, and, coming to Australia was certainly not that easy to begin with. I think they're really happy here now. But there's lots of challenges and it's a huge change. So very interesting stuff, I think. Now, it occurred to me that this episode is a good companion with one from a couple of months back about some of my guests who were choosing where to live abroad. So they haven't migrated exactly, but they're contemplating it or finding other alternatives. So if you're curious about that, hop back to episode 162, which is called Choosing Where to Live Abroad, and have a listen to that. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening to episode 171 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I would love you to go and check out some of the great work that my guests are doing. First up, I chatted with Queen D Michele, and she's written a book called Considerations, A Guide for Moving Abroad, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Suzanne Kamata, you can find her work at suzannekamata.com. She's an author with lots of really interesting publications, and her recent book was Squeaky Wheels, about travelling with her daughter and her wheelchair. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Luana Marchi, and she's a health and wellness coach based out of Sydney, and she works online as well. And you can find all about Luana at luanamarchi.com.au. That's LuanaMarchi. The show notes for this episode, because this is episode 171, they will be at notaballerina.com/171. And if you want to chat about moving abroad or any other thoughtful travel issue, come along to our Facebook group. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook, or there'll be a link in the show notes as well. So I hope it's given you something to think about. And if you are considering moving abroad, I would love to hear from you and know more about it, because it's a big move, but a really interesting one. Thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.